Hi guys, today I'm going to be talking about Native American boarding schools. I'm going to focus on the Mount Pleasant boarding school that we have here. I do want to give a quick trigger warning. I do talk about some sensitive topics in this speech. I don't really go into specifics, but they are mentioned, so I just want everyone to be aware before we listen to the rest of this. Let's get started. Mount Pleasant is rich with Native American history, as well as a reminder of the tragedies this tribe has gone through. From 1893 to 1934, a quiet campus in Mount Pleasant wasn't just a school, it was a part of a national system designed to, quote, kill the Indian, save the man. The Mount Pleasant boarding school still stands today, becoming a lasting symbol of an era's complex and often painful history. Learning about the history of something so culturally significant that's so close to home provides insight on Michigan's role on Native American educational systems. The Mount Pleasant boarding school played a major role in Michigan's history and continues to impact Native American families in the area today. I have been close to many of the people from the tribe that resides in Mount Pleasant since I was just a baby. I grew up hearing the stories of those who have been affected by the boarding school, which influenced me to educate myself more on the topic. First, I will give a brief history lesson on the Indian boarding schools. Second, I will talk about the Mount Pleasant boarding school. And then finally, I will discuss the lasting impacts the school had on Native American residents in Mount Pleasant. The Mount Pleasant boarding school played a major role in Michigan's history and continues to impact Native American families in the area today. Between the early 1800s and the late 1900s, hundreds of thousands of Native American children were taken to a place where they would have to leave their culture behind and adapt to a new way of life, either willingly or by force. This resulted in many deaths and the loss of indigenous culture. During the 1800s, the Native American Assimilation Act first began, which encouraged American education be provided to indigenous societies, thus introducing the idea of these boarding schools. With the passing of this act, it led to the creation of federally funded boarding schools and initiated the beginning of the Indian boarding school era. According to Melissa May Jean, Native American boarding schools began operating in the 1860s when the Bureau of Indian Affairs established the first on-reservation boarding school. Like clockwork, after the first school was up and running, many more followed. Meja states that there are approximately 357 boarding schools across 30 U.S. states between 1860 and 1978. While a free education may seem like a great opportunity, these children were taken to the schools without their consent, suffered extreme abuse, and some even died. Many children between the ages of 4 and 16 were taken without full parental consent. Carleo reports that the schools, quote, took deliberate and strategic action to isolate the children from their families. As well as isolation, these children were subjected to many forms of abuse, including physical, verbal, and sexual abuse. One survivor recalls, quote, girls were going home pregnant. A lot of these children were 11, 12, 13 years old. Unfortunately, abuse and isolation weren't the only things happening to these children. Many deaths occurred over the years in these schools. According to HAPETH, over 900 Native American children died at the U.S. boarding schools across the country. These boarding schools were not just meant to give indigenous children an education, they were meant to erase their culture. Richard Henry Pratt, founder of the first off-reservation boarding school, was quoted as saying, kill the Indian, save the man. According to the MNHS, these children arrived at these schools. They were given English names, made to cut their hair, and forbidden to speak their native language. These children were also made to convert to Christianity, stripping them of their personal beliefs and ideas. Now that we went over a brief history lesson of the boarding schools, I want to talk about the Mount Pleasant boarding school. The Mount Pleasant boarding school was one of many in the U.S. during the boarding school era and still stands today. The boarding school was built in in the 1880s. It was taking students as soon as 1893. There were 11 different buildings on the grounds, making it one of the largest boarding schools in the country at the time. This is according to the Saginaw Chippewa Tribe website. These children were taken to the school the children that were taken to the school were primarily from Michigan, but they are also from Alaska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, New York, with about 300 children living there throughout the years that it was up and running. The boarding school specialized in religious education. Other classes included English, housekeeping, farming, and basic first aid. We can't really talk about the Michigan boarding school without mentioning the name Martha Shanabe and the key role that she had in the history of this school. According to the Saginaw Chippewa Tribe, Martha, a 14-year-old girl, was forcibly taken from her family and sent to this school. In 1899, Martha set fire to the school's main building, resulting in total destruction. No one was killed, but it sent a strong message about the conditions of the school. Articles about the fire brought attention to the abuse and isolation faced by the children that attended the school. This fire created a domino effect, and 35 years later, the school was shut down. Now that I told you about the history of the Mount Pleasant boarding school, I want to discuss the impact it had on Native American residents in Mount Pleasant. While the school was shut down, even though the school was shut down, it left lasting impacts on the children and families that attended these schools. After the children were set free, the trauma was not over. During their time at school, children were forbidden to speak their native language, their hair was cut, and they were forbidden to practice their spirituality, resulting in a loss of cultural continuity. This is according to the Saginaw Chippewa Tribe. Unfortunately, many families were not reunited after the closing of the school, and some children ended up in group homes, foster care, or even homeless. The estimated death toll was approximately 227 children. This is kind of up to debate because we don't know a total death toll because when the children died, they weren't recorded. There was no recorded documentation of these deaths. 91 years since the school has been shut down, we can still see the effects it has on the Saginaw Chippewa Tribe. First-hand accounts reveal stories of trauma, strength, and resilience from the children who attended the school. These stories are told from the now much older children as they recall what happened to them and how it still affects not only themselves but generations after them. One granddaughter of a survivor recalls, "I used to make the statement, quote, 'Normal is setting a time on a washing machine. We don't, as people, know what normal is, and it's because of the historical trauma of the boarding school.'" The school still stands today and belongs to the Saginaw Chippewa Tribe. As of 2010, the Saginaw Chippewa Tribe states that they were given 8.86 acres of land to preserve the building as well as the cemetery that's on the property. A Morning Sun article states that the tribe has hopes of turning this boarding school and the grounds that surround it into a peaceful sanctuary for healing, education, wellness, and empowerment. Today, we went over the history of Native American boarding schools, and then we discussed the Mount Pleasant boarding schools, and finally, I discussed the lasting impact the schools had on Native American residents in Mount Pleasant. The Mount Pleasant boarding school played a major role in Michigan's history and continues to impact Native families in the area today. In conclusion, as we remember the Mount Pleasant Indian Industrial Boarding School, we honor the children who came home and the survivors who still carry its memory. Though the school closed long ago, its impact remains. By sharing these stories, we choose truth, healing, and a future where every culture is respected and every voice is heard. Thank you.